Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Black Rims. I'm Mars Girl.
I'm Josh Knight the First.
And thanks for being so patient with us as we've been missing for a week. Apologies.
Yeah, sorry, that one was on me.
Why don't you tell everybody what you've been up to?
I'm actually right now doing a play of Mice and Men. I think I've mentioned that before, but yes, we opened last week. It's been doing pretty good, and then after this weekend I'll be done.
So then nothing else should get in the way for a while, is what you're telling me.
It should be fine, basically.
Alright, let's not let it happen again.
If it does, it's out of my control.
Oh, alright. That's reasonable.
Dang straight it's reasonable.
Fine. So let's talk about what we're going to be talking about today, because, you know what, we've got a lot to kind of catch up on anyway. We're going to be busy talking, basically, is what I'm telling you. Anyway.
On tonight's show.
For starters, I'm going to talk about the fact that, I talked to you guys earlier about how Disney was like, hey, bye LucasArts, and then now we find out that Disney's like, hey, hello EA for Star Wars games. So I'm going to talk about that for a bit.
I'm going to talk about the current situation with casting for Power Rangers Super Mega Force and how it relates to past Power Rangers being able to return or not, depending on really how much they're willing to pay them.
Beyond that, you might consider the episode over at that point, but we saw a midnight screening of Iron Man 3 on its release night.
Yeah, so for the final portion of tonight's show, like Kaylin said, we have our two individual topics, but if you have not seen the movie or don't want any spoilers about that, go ahead. We'll go ahead and make a clear mark in the notes where to stop, but we're going to go ahead and give our 2 cents about what we thought about Iron Man 3.
Because quite frankly, it's really not news, but we don't have really another venue to discuss it, and because it is such a huge money machine at the moment.
Oh yes, millions upon millions of dollars right now.
Then I do think it's relevant to talk about. So if you've seen the movie or you don't care about spoilers, then by all means stick around. But we're gonna notify you before we get started on it where to stop. And if you've already read down below in the description box, then I'll have notated exactly when the Iron Man 3 discussion pops up, so you don't have to worry about running into spoilers.
Well, we talked about me for a second. What have you been up to, Kaylin?
What have I been up to? Oh, been working. I know I've been doing quite a lot. Unfortunately, it's all personal life stuff that really I feel rather ashamed that I can't get out the content that I keep saying I want to get out.
Well, I can at least go ahead and go on record as saying I've seen you continually working on the next 13 video.
I don't even want to keep saying I'm working on it, even though it's the truth, because all I'm doing is kind of talking out my ass at this point. I feel really guilty, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm sure once the time comes, it'll be well received.
Well, whatever. Don't ask me what I've been up to anymore.
All right.
I can't give an answer. It's completely filled to the brim with crap, and I can't even talk about it. So
Fair enough.
Really, we don't have too terribly much of a follow-up sort of piece, but we do have a lot else to talk about today.
So right now, we're just going to get right into the first topic.
And again, for starters, I'm going to go straight into talking about Disney and Star Wars yet again. And like I mentioned earlier, a couple weeks back, Disney had been like, hey, LucasArts, you know how you guys have been making Star Wars games? Well, you're not doing that anymore. We're shutting you guys down, and we are going to worry about making our own quality Star Wars games from this point forward. And, there was a big old uproar about that. Well, now it turns out that Disney's like, hey, you know what would be a great idea? Assigning EA to do all of our Star Wars games from this point forward.
What?
The internet is pissed.
What?
The internet is pissed.
EA.
EA
Sports.
Well, EA Sports is part of EA, yes.
The people who work on Madden are going to be working on Star Wars.
Well, hey, look, they do a lot more than just sports titles. The problem is that they're a terrible company, A, to do business with, and B, to work for. It's been noted time and time again over the years. They're highly reputable for terrible business practice. I mean, really, the only good thing that could come out of it is that BioWare is under the EA umbrella, and BioWare did the Knights of the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic 2, and The Old Republic, the MMO. So, there's hope, but a lot of people aren't really holding out too terribly much hope.
I'm not.
There's really not much hope that a third KOTOR will be made. Whatever, they're just sitting on a free-to-play MMO and making microtransactions, because, that's the future of things, very, very sadly.
Now, explain the microtransactions just for a second.
Okay, well, microtransactions are when a company flips you the bird and is like, hey, you like content, right? Well, you can pay 99 cents for this tiny piece of content, and then you can pay 99 cents for this other tiny piece of content. And then, that's really common among MMOs. That's become a thing among recent Final Fantasy releases. Obviously not the core numeric series, but in Final Fantasy, put your fingers all over the screen to win, it's microtransactions. And EA is really well known for not just its microtransactions, but not really including a full game on a disc before it launches. You're pretty much expected from EA, like, oh, they just released this game. Yeah, it's done, but I can expect to throw down a few more bucks to get its add-ons and its... take Mass Effect 3, for example, where people were disappointed with the ending of the game, and then they're like, why don't we, rewrite the ending of the game? And then you guys can buy it after you've already bought your game. It's... EA's business practices are weird. Or take, for example, if you even want to access their online junk, you gotta have the little code inside the booklet, right? That makes sense, okay? Let's say you bought a used copy. You won't have that booklet because, people are jackasses like that and don't return a full product.
Right.
Then you gotta pay EA to get a code and then have access to internet-related stuff for that game. They do that with their sports titles. I want to say they did that with Mass Effect also. Really, EA is like, what little ways can we milk more money out of people? It's just really, really common.
But microtransactions, things like that, all of this, the reason I made you bring it up is, what does that all mean in the long run? When you add up all those microtransactions, it's not just a little bit, 99 cents here, 99 cents there.
No, it's a lot of money.
Giraffe money.
Which...
fits right into the Disney marketing ideal.
Which, I mean, I know that people have been harping on Disney and their money-grubbing ways for a long time. A really, really, really long time.
Based off that, basically what I'm saying is, do you blame them for making that kind of a decision?
As a business decision, no, I don't blame them. But nobody's happy with them. I mean, like I was trying to say, everybody has been like, oh, Disney, you're just the root of all evil, you and all of your money. People have been saying that for decades. But, then you add on the fact that now they're just sort of Borging everything in sight, just assimilating everything within its grasp. Like, what is next and what is left?
It reminds me of a comic from years ago. It was a picture of the Borg mothership and then the picture of, just the Mickey Mouse ears. and then you see a Borg with mouse ears on, and Mickey with the Borg eye patch,
Yeah,
and the
I've
caption
seen
on the
it.
bottom is, after a while, we don't know who assimilated who.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I think it's a very true idea of, like, there was a point where Disney on its own was just evil, and then it's like, at what point has Disney gone too far? How far will we let them go? Where Disney starts assimilating everything, and then they take what we love and they start killing it off. One after another after another. We get rid of LucasArts, which, you know, as I mentioned the last time we brought up LucasArts, they were sadly kind of circling the drain from the kind of company they once were. I guess there's always some hope in the back of a fanboy's mind that, no, they're gonna get it back, and
Well,
then
see,
there was never
that's
even the chance, like, by partnering with Disney, Lucas, and everything LucasArts and Lucasfilms, they suddenly had tons more money that they could have worked with, you know?
Right.
And maybe they could have been great again if applied properly, but they were never given the opportunity. Instead, there goes LucasArts, and here comes EA, yet another money-grubbing company. And it's not that Disney assimilated EA, it's that they're like, hey, we want to do a licensing partnership with you to produce Star Wars games. We will only go to you, EA, to produce these games, you know?
Right.
Now, granted, it's not like EA publishes bad titles. They really don't, and as much as Mass Effect, as people got up in arms at the ending of Mass Effect 3, that's really just a matter of taste as far as writing is concerned, right at the tail end, and I personally don't feel as though it completely and utterly ruined the whole Mass Effect series. I don't even think it ruined Mass Effect 3. You could think about it this way, too. Obviously, Mass Effect wanted to be Star Wars the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
It felt pretty obvious to me, and as it was, that was BioWare working on it. BioWare, who, of course, did the Old Republic series. So, obviously, there's all these similar themes and overtones and even gameplay similarities between the two. I guess in that sense it sort of seems like the obvious choice to go with EA.
Well, okay, aside from all these, questionable business practices, things of that nature, really just to, I guess, kind of balance it out, is there anything that EA's done that would seem to make things, I guess, be the silver lining of this business deal?
Well, that would be it right there, is that BioWare has good history of good Star Wars games,
well,
and Mass Effect is a perfect example of something that wanted to be Star Wars the whole time, and it was good gameplay.
Well, the thing about that, though, that I wonder about is, yes, you've got the Mass Effect thing there, but at the same time, they don't specifically call out, hey, BioWare is going to be working on these. No, they say flat out EA. If that specificity had been there, that, hey, we're working with BioWare, I don't think half the internet would be in the uproar that it is over this.
No, of course not, because, I mean, you're absolutely right when you're like, oh no, these are the guys that do Madden. Well, yeah, that is a concern. I mean,
Right.
They're just the guys that shovel out the same game every single year, and oh boy.
Because then you get, like, the Madden curse happening. Like, I don't know if you're aware that, like, usually the person that get on the Madden cover, it's this thing that's been going around for years. If you get put on the Madden cover, you end up suffering an injury later on in the season.
Is that a thing?
Yes. And so what I'm thinking the horrible version of that would be EA makes the Star Wars game, and then the only fitting thing to do is put Chewbacca on the cover.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, why would you say that? Oh, no.
Well, because then it would be different, because it'd be circumventing the curse, because if you know enough about the expanded universe, you kind of already know to expect that.
Yeah, that's true. Granted, maybe this now means that, oh god, I hope this doesn't mean that Star Wars will have, like, a reoccurring yearly game.
Well, yeah, because now we have reoccurring yearly movies scheduled.
Well, I mean, like, Star Wars 2014, Star Wars 2015, and then it's like...
Yeah, that's exactly what Disney told us that was going to happen. So now they've got the games to go along with it with a company that knows how to do that.
Well, then they've got different kinds of, like, sports equipment on every cover, and that, like, as it is in Star Wars Connect.
Hey, did you get Han Solo in your fantasy draft? Wait, no, that's not the same thing.
That's not the... Fantasy football is a complete... You know what? Just stop.
Sorry.
Just stop.
Yeah, I understand the footballs. No, I don't.
How many yards he gotta run to make it to home base?
Yeah, The
answer is Han Solo.
How many yards on the Kessel Run?
Did we determine whether a Kessel Run was time or distance?
No, a parsec. A parsec is a measure of time, not distance. It's even what they bring up in the dang Family Guy Star Wars special when I think it's Chris calls Peter/Han Solo on that. Like, isn't that a measurement of, or Brian says it, isn't that a measurement of time and a distance? And Peter just goes up, 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 up.
Was it you who said that Han Solo just found a shortcut and that's the explanation as to why?
Yeah.
That's a terrible explanation.
I know it's a terrible explanation, but that's what a fan does. They justify stupid decisions.
Yeah, but
because they love a property.
We are not here to be those kind of people.
Not today we are. Some days I will admit to being that, but not today. Not today, ma'am.
Okay, I don't think I can talk about this anymore.
Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to the second topic. For those who have been paying attention for the last at least week or so, there's been a bit of news circulating surrounding casting for return appearances of older Power Rangers to the continuation of the current season, Power Rangers Megaforce, which would then be called Power Rangers Super Megaforce. Now, before I go into that, I have to get this off my chest about the stupid decision they're making with the suits. Very clearly, Megaforce, as I mentioned before, is based off Goseiger, the 34th Sentai. The 35th Sentai, Gokaiger, was an anniversary year, and in doing so, they brought back all these older Rangers for team-ups, power-ups to their, what we would call a Megazord. And it was quite well done, in my opinion. It was very well written, very well acted. The action was some of the best I've seen out of Super Sentai in years, and that's really where they wanted to come from in doing Super Megaforce. The thing about that is with the teams, the Goseiger and the Gokaiger are two different teams. You know, they fought alongside each other. Over here, what they're doing with Super Megaforce is that, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around why they decided this was a good idea. They're still keeping the Goseiger suits, but they will then transform themselves into the Gokaiger suits to then transform into older Rangers.
That sounds a little convoluted.
It's very convoluted. Rather than just have a brand new team, no, it's going to be the same team wearing a different costume to wear different costumes.
Why do they need to go to all that trouble?
I don't know why they would do that. Like, a lot of fans have theorized, well, why didn't they just have a rival team that were, played up more like the Gokaiger were, like renegades. They don't necessarily care about the history, but then they learn about it. Not necessarily being so strict to the source material, but still kind of making it our own.
Mm.
But the thing about it being, they're doing this, much like Gokaiger was the 35th anniversary over there, they're doing this for the 20th anniversary of Power Rangers over here. And naturally, when you have an anniversary, you want to harken back to things people, came to the series for, things they enjoy. And one of those things is the actors, the characters that you grew up loving. Right off the bat, you think of the original six, Tommy, Jason, Billy, Zach, Trini, and Kimberly. You would like to see them back, and that can't necessarily happen right now. One being, of course, Three Trang, who was the Yellow Ranger, unfortunately, died in a car accident many years ago. So obviously she can't come back, but other Rangers who wore that costume, specifically Karen Ashley, who was the second Yellow Ranger on the show, could have come back. But the thing that's happening with her and several other Rangers is that they're not going to come back. Because the word has been circulating that Saban, long story short, is being too cheap to bring him back. They're not being paid or being offered the payment that would be worth the time for them to return out to this anniversary show. And that is a dang shame.
Hasn't it been that in some cases Saban was even like, hey, won't you guys come back? And they're like, sure. And then they're like, lol, scratch that.
Actually, that's exactly what happened with, and this is really insulting when you think about it, the Titanium Ranger from Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue, who has the notoriety of being the first ever purely American Ranger. He was not based off any Sentai counterpart. He is purely 100% an American creation. So his involvement in the anniversary would really be a strong thing to have. But unfortunately, that is exactly what happened. Saban was like, hey, we would like you to come out and do the filming for Super Mega Force. And then they were like, oh, yeah, about that. Yeah, budget restrictions, lol, no, okay, thanks, bye. And that's a dang shame.
That's really terrible business practice, too.
I mean, on top of it being, dickish, that shows that Saban, which, by the way, isn't necessarily hurting for money, because people still buy their kids Power Rangers stuff all the time. I know several adults who still buy Power Rangers stuff, myself included. They're not hurting for this stuff. They could afford to give these guys the pay due them. And, it's not just them. Karen Ashley, the Titanium Ranger, whose name I forget, why can't I remember his name? But yes, the Titanium Ranger, Steve Cardenas, who played the second Red Ranger. They're opting out of these piddly offers that they're getting, which pretty much cancel out when you think about they have to pay their own way down there, cover travel, food, lodging. It doesn't balance out.
Quite frankly, I'm pretty sure that this has been discussed publicly by some fellow producers that I've worked with. That was a large situation this past year during our anniversary movie.
Yes, you were mentioning that.
And in fact, it had been like that for all the movies. Like, we don't get paid for those.
Right.
It sounds like what Saban is asking them to do. Like, it's one thing for us, because we are in a business, but not the same kind of business. We're a bunch of nerds on the internet, and we do things for fun, and, we made anniversary movies because they were the fun thing to do, and, the problem was that it took a week out of our time to be able to, that was time that we could have used to create and release our own content, and, we unfortunately weren't able to do it quite as well as we would have liked. Right. So for a little bit we were kind of struggling, some of us, but I think everything ended up okay. For these actors, that's a lot of their bread and butter. And, we were working with people who built up, it was an indie project where, admittedly, the money was limited, and we were all understanding of that. Saban, though, is a completely different case. They're not, a company is going to be money grubbing, of course, but they're not, they could help these actors out.
Now, I'm going to do something here that's a little, I guess, flipping this to the other side of the coin. Now, specifically, I'll reference Steve Cardenas, who, a funny thing I'll mention for a second, his aunt was my 4th grade teacher, and that was right when he was on the show. And so that's just kind of a funny thing there. We were there in class, and she's like, "Hey, you kids watch Power Rangers?" "Yeah, of course we watch Power Rangers." "Oh, my nephew, he's the Red Ranger." "No, he's not!" "Okay, I'll prove it." And then a week later, she had a signed 8x10. Hey, hey, nice to see you, hope the kids like it. And we were just, like, blown away, like, I vicariously know a Power Ranger? And then, I lost it. Point being, he references, in a post relating to, his turning down the chance to come on Megaforce, and I'll quote here, the pay was too low and there's not a lot of character development. Just going to be in the background as an extra. I would love to do it, but I couldn't possibly take the amount of time away from my business for a little amount of money. I'm sorry, but I believe that it's them letting the fans down because they want to get away with paying a little. I hope you understand. Now, of course, like you just said, there is very much the business aspect of what we're talking about here. That you would like to be able to get paid for the work you're doing. However, I'll throw it back to where they're using the source footage out of this with Gokaiger. Gokaiger, just to give a little bit of a background on this, was only planned to have so many team-up episodes. As many as there were for add-ons to their Megazord. Mm-hmm. Which were really just the most recent years. But the thing is, the show has been running for 35 years. You kind of have to throw a little bone, you would think, at the older fans who might be watching with their kids. So they're like, okay, well, maybe we'll do 1 or 2 small episodes, but that's it. And so they were contacting people who did acting for playing the main parts in Gingaman, which was used over here as the footage for Lost Galaxy. Mm-hmm. And they contacted their Red Ranger and their Black Helper Ranger. And they were kind of talking about, okay, we'll bring you guys back, but it'll be a real short thing. Well, what ended up happening is, as you recall, there was that giant earthquake and tsunami there in Japan, and what ended up happening was that a lot of the older actors from Super Sentai took to Twitter to post these inspiring messages like, hey guys, don't give up hope, we're all here for you, we're all band together and we'll all come together and be, stronger than we ever were. And Toei, the parent company, took notice of this, that people were really responding to, hey, these guys are really, putting themselves out there, and not for any sort of profit, but really to lift people's spirits on this sort of thing. So they ended up deciding to reach out to more people, that used to work on the shows. Hey, would you guys like to come back, even if it was just for a second? And they got a massive amount of support for this, and a lot of characters ended up coming back, if only for a second, and if only to have their face shown on screen for a few seconds, both in the show and in the summer movie that they had. And that, in and of itself, is a testament to the selflessness of those actors, but at the same time, it speaks to, I think, something that the actors over here might have just forgotten about, is that it's more than just the money sometimes. Mm-hmm. It'd be nice to hear one of these actors say, hey, look, I know this pay sucks, but to some little kid out there, I was their hero. And over the course of 20 years, you can influence quite a few people. It would just be... I don't even know how I want to say it. Nice to see that somebody would look past that to the bigger thing of what, I guess, a Power Ranger would stand for in a person's mind. Not just, oh, you're just in a kid's show. No, to some people, you're not just an escape. You're not just entertainment. For some people, you're their hope.
Well, I can say 2 things in response to that. One kind of on one hand and one on the other. One, what's something tragic that's gone on recently? I suppose Boston Marathon bombing.
Of course, yes.
I mean, do you have actors showing up and hitting the Twitterverse and saying anything about real world events? I mean, do they do that? Do these people step up and actually be the hero in real life, even? I mean, I don't know if they care. I don't know if... I'm not entirely sure how to phrase what I'm thinking right now. Just that what I think I'm saying is, I'm not sure that there has been something so nationally grieving as that tsunami was for Japan. Not to say that the Boston Marathon wasn't a horrible situation.
Right, but
not to minimize the severity of that, but rather, Power Rangers is something that affects a country of children. You know, it's something that children across the whole country watch, and probably that age range doesn't know or understand the Boston Marathon thing. And there just hasn't been there hasn't been a reason for these actors to kind of step it up in that same sort of situation. On the other hand, perhaps we're hearing right now are the people who said no, and maybe there's people who have said yes that they're not supposed to say that they've said yes.
Well, we've had a few people that we know have signed on. Most of the actors from Power Ranger Samurai are coming back. At the least, we know that the Jungle Fury Red Ranger has been spotted on set. And maybe there's one or two others, but for the most part, there hasn't been a great amount of news that people are coming back that, you know, this character that I know and love will be seen on screen again.
Well, again, maybe it's just that we haven't heard it.
Unfortunately, I end up seeing myself being in the position of I know enough to know that's probably wishful thinking. Because really, what people want to see, like, I remember when that first footage of what was referred to in Gokaiger as the Legend War was shown over here at Power Morphicon, you know, where they show all these past Sentai members, and of course over here Power Rangers, lining this field, and the audience lost their dang minds. You know, for two reasons. One being, you either knew what that footage was, and you're like, oh sweet, they're going to keep it over here, or two, you weren't knowledgeable about Super Sentai, but you at least know Power Rangers, and to see all of them on screen at the same time, you know, clear-cut good against evil, you want that. But on top of that, it's not just enough to see the suit, it's a whole nother level when you see a suit, but you hear at least the voice that you expect to come out of that suit. And some of it, I think, when you really boil it down, is yes, it's money, but at the same time, I'm wondering if it's not just the slightest bit of pride to not want to take the money and do it.
That's a good argument.
Because, you know, it's... Like, I thought about it, you know, they could have possibly had, you know... Because really what anybody would want to see over here for a 20th anniversary is some form of those original 5 characters out there, you know, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Austin St. John, granted, he's gained a little bit of weight, but it's not unheard of that a person could slim down and do it again.
Even so, you don't necessarily need to put that guy back in his suit.
Necessarily, right.
He could just cameo.
Right. Walter Jones and both Walter Jones and Johnny Young Bosch are frequently guests of conventions. They still, you know, love the fan base. David Yost, if, you know, Saban could clean up the, you know, the bad air between them, you know, a formal apology of some sort for, you know, all the way they treated him on the show, maybe he would come back. Karen Ashley was the only hope to have the Yellow Ranger back there, but she just said she wouldn't do it. And then Amy Jo Johnson, really right now she's working on a show called Flashpoint, which is, you know, it's a few seasons in right now. And I guess you would almost argue that she and Johnny Young Bosch are probably doing the best right now, and that they're still
They still have a career.
Yeah. And then Jason David Frank.
Quite frankly, like...
Well...
He is so, like... By the way, guys, did you know that I'm Jason David Frank and I was every Ranger ever?
Well, 4.
He says he's every Ranger ever. Come on, you've seen him on Facebook.
I met the guy like twice at a convention, and I'm not gonna lie, I was happy to have done it. But at the same time, yeah, it's...
Yeah, but it got worse since then.
Well, really,
you know?
what should really be the focus here is the manner in which he went about campaigning to get on Super Mega Force, which is really...
Like, why would you need to do that? If Saban wants you back, they'll ask for you back.
Right.
You shouldn't need to ask your fans to ask Saban to ask for you back.
Like, it's no secret that out of that original cast, as far as character goes, Tommy was the breakout star.
Oh, of course.
You know, when you played Power Rangers on the playground as kids, who'd everybody, okay guys, we're gonna play Power Rangers. Who wants to be the Green Ranger? Ooh, me. That was always what you went for, because you had the shield and the dragon dagger, and, you look cool.
Well, he was obviously just the coolest dude, because he was the transfer-in student, and he was super awesome at martial arts, and then he was a bad guy who wasn't really a bad guy, and then he became a good guy. Like, what's cooler than that?
No, at the time there was nothing cooler than that.
Yeah.
I was there, hooked to my TV for the Green with Evil saga.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about it is that there's a difference between the character Tommy Oliver and Jason David Frank, but I think sometimes he forgets that.
Oh, he absolutely is lost in being Tommy. He has built his entire dojo around the fact that he was the Green Ranger.
And I don't know, it's to a certain extent, like, I know we've got Derma Blend out, for that, but just because he's got so many tattoos, it's like, you don't want to show that necessarily to the kids, unless you want to say, Tommy fell on some bad times, but he's back now as the Green Ranger.
Yeah. Either way, okay. I just think that I understand your argument about actors potentially just showing enough compassion to just show back up and do the work again. At the same time, we live on some hard times, bruh. I mean, really it is something that can potentially hurt somebody to ask them to take time out of their busy schedule and basically not get paid.
No, I know.
When at the same time they already have something that makes them their bread and butter every day, and these guys, aside from a couple of them, aren't doing major business on a regular basis.
Yeah, I really, the optimal thing to do would be a little give and take on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Have a little compassion for the fans, and have a little compassion for the actors.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it boils down to.
Well, we'll wait and see who they get.
Yeah, time will tell soon enough.
Yay.
So, that's my 2 cents on that.
I think from here, if you don't want to hear about Iron Man 3, you can consider the episode over. We're done. We'll just scrap it. We're how many minutes in? We're like 37 minutes in. Right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so you guys have like 15 seconds to stop and hit pause. Or you have 15 seconds to go get a drink of water, come back.
Because we're going to start talking about Iron Man 3. Are you guys ready?
Alright.
Alright, I'm going to start talking about
Iron Man 3. So, right off the bat, Iron Man 3. I'm going into this movie hopeful. Because, Iron Man 1, they knocked this character out of the park. Iron Man 2, not as much action as I would like, but, whatever. Iron Man 3, the Avengers. Oh my god, what can you say about the Avengers? And now we've got the actual third movie installment in this franchise. I was disappointed.
Well, okay. I personally, prior to Marvel movies, and really only within the last, 5 years or so, to be quite honest, I was never much of a sequels person for, anything. But then Marvel movies started proving me wrong a little bit.
Right.
And I'm like, alright, I guess I can handle this. But then, admittedly, with the trailers for Iron Man 3, I was kind of like, well, I'm not so sure, but, the other two, I was entertained. And usually I'm either like, yeah, I really loved it, or I'm like, man, I really didn't like this movie and I don't want to see it again. But, I would sit down and watch the other Iron Man movies again. But Iron Man 3, man, that trailer, I was concerned at first about Mandarin.
Yes.
Cause I was really concerned just by trailer alone. Because at first I was like, oh man, the Mandarin is such a racist character.
Well, yeah, if you know his origins, yeah, he's kind of...
Because when I was reading comics, okay,
yeah,
I'm really OCD,
right.
like really, really bad. I can't watch or read anything unless I start from the beginning. Thus,
Right.
I have a problem with Doctor Who because I can't start anywhere except for the first Doctor, and thus I can't start in comics anything unless it's from the beginning. Even though you can tell me, oh, well, it restarts and it's being retold if you start reading from this thing here. No, I can't do it.
Your
I gotta
OCD won't allow it.
No. So there I am reading from the beginning of Iron Man's creation, right?
Right.
And when Mandarin first shows up, much like everything else Marvel, everything is so racist.
Right.
Everything is racist. And I was like, the Mandarin, oh no, this is gonna be terrible. But then I think you kind of convinced me, like, no, it could be okay. Like,
well, yes, because aside from his origins, the Mandarin is kind of like the go-to guy that you think about when you think of arch nemesis against, Iron Man. More often than not in popular culture, he's the guy you go to. When they made the Invincible Iron Man animated movie, they stuck in the Mandarin as the main bad guy. Granted, he wasn't done right there either, but at least he's the guy you go to. In Iron Man Armored Adventures, who you go to? The Mandarin. The 90s animated series, who was the main bad guy? The Mandarin.
But the point really was that at the time he was racist and he was really kind of silly and dorky.
Yeah.
But then I was kind of like, well, he looks pretty serious here, and he's not necessarily... maybe he's got some Asian influences, but he's not really an Asian dude. Like, it could be... They could take this guy, right? This magical dude.
Yeah.
And they could serious him the hell up, and this could be, like, a cool interpretation, and I could feel better about what he becomes, and he would still retain exactly the characteristics that are necessary to make him the Mandarin, and that would have been great.
Now, the thing about that is... in looking at the Mandarin, I think I mentioned before, the costume is probably the best representation you could have asked for out of all the stuff he's ever looked like. Optimally, what they could have done with the universe that they've set up is if he had acted a bit more the way they played Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins, that would have been perfect. Because they set up between, the first two movies, if you read the supplementary material, they talk about the 10 Rings, the group that kidnaps Tony in the first movie. That's a reference to the Mandarin's 10 magical rings of power. Second movie, they don't mention it, but I believe it's there in the cutscenes, that the way Ivan Vanko gets down to that race to beat up Tony is because the 10 Rings funded him getting down there, which is, again, tying it back together again. So this third movie saying the Mandarin's going to show up, all right, great, awesome, we're finally going to get the payoff.
And it's gonna be this awesome, like, magic versus machine sort of...
Yes, great!
That did not happen!
No, that did not happen. Not in the slightest. What we got, they pretty much pulled The Dark Knight Rises on us. In that,
Worse than.
Because it's one thing that, hey, you thought Bane was the bad guy? No, it's really Talia al Ghul. And on top of that, not only is it Talia al Ghul, Bane has feelings.
He's a sensitive type, you see. He loved her because he essentially raised her.
No, that's not Bane! No, and at least I can give credit to that.
Well, let's take a step back and say that we didn't know what the source material was. Even then, Bane was played like a tool. Like,
in that reveal, he's played as a tool, but at the least, you got to see Bane do Bane stuff. He at least broke Batman's back.
Well, it's like, okay, you've built up this guy who was capable of committing all of these things, and then suddenly he goes down like a complete chump because story says so. And
because Catwoman shot him with a rocket.
He just kind of stood there and took it.
Right. Whereas here, in Iron Man 3, we don't even get that because we find out the Mandarin's fiction. He's a character created by Killian to basically get back at Tony Stark, and he's basically Ben Kingsley acting like Russell Brand. He's nobody.
And really, the guy has no idea just how horrible an atrocity he's really played into, despite the fact that he plainly shoots a man in the head. But
no, he didn't actually shoot him. He says as much. It was blanks.
Uh-huh.
But still, it's like, you build this up for, 2 movies, and then nothing. Not even nothing. Like, it's that line from Avatar, you don't even have the courtesy to piss on us and call it rain.
It's just that, he was this guy hired to be an actor, to be a puppet, so
Right.
that America freaks the hell out. And even then, you kind of see it coming. You see
Well, if
most
you're
of
paying
the movie,
attention, you see the whole movie coming.
but you see
that was
the movie
another
coming
problem.
the whole time. That, like, I got it that the Mandarin was a puppet the whole time. What I didn't realize until that very last moment in this reveal was that not only was he a puppet, but he was just an actor. There's nothing special about him. He's just some face to put with a fear. And
Yeah.
then he's just a tool who walks around, sleeps around with women, and drinks lots of booze. And that's it. That's the end of the Mandarin.
And the thing about that is, like, I'll get off the Mandarin for a second and get on to the movie. You know everything that's going to happen in the movie. 1, watching the trailer, and 2, if you're paying attention, watch the first 5 minutes of the movie, and you tell me they didn't broadcast everything that was going to happen.
Well, I'm bothered by all the things that seem really, really unnecessary. What's name of first girlfriend?
What, Pep? Oh, not her. The girl who invented Extremis, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she's pointless.
Well, yeah, because they completely ruined the Extremis storyline.
She's pointless. Then Killian is scorned by Tony Stark in 1999. Oh no, the guy with the biggest ego on the face of the planet didn't really pay attention to me. Now I will go take over America in 14 years.
Like, who does that?
I don't understand.
Like,
I know people are crazy. Okay, I know comics want to tell you that these people are just crazy, and yeah, okay, but that's just, that's really lame, if you ask
because
me.
when you think about it, that kind of mindset, like, oh, hey, I got scorned when I wasn't quite that popular, and now I'm going to do something about it, that's just the plot to The Social Network. No. And then it's like, what did he want exactly? Did he want revenge for Tony, or did he want to take over the world?
Well, I don't know about the world. Either way, obviously he was choosing other puppets to work through. He casted the Mandarin.
Right.
Then he goes and pulls the strings to kill the president and then replace him with another president who will more than likely totally be on his side because he's got the stuff to help the vice president's daughter regenerate limbs and junk.
Okay, I gotta get on that for a second. Freaking Extremis, alright? In the comics, if you have the ability, if you have Netflix, go look up the motion comic. It's not that hard. People can do free trials on that. The way Extremis works, it was Tony against one guy who has Extremis. And yes, it is at least portrayed that accurately, that it gives you, regenerative powers, super strength, and kind of this fiery burning sensation. But what that's supposed to do is that one dude's supposed to beat the crap out of Tony to the point where he has to inject himself with Extremis, but modify it to where that's what he uses to call the armor to himself and be better and faster than this one guy. What the movie does is it's not just one guy, it's 20 guys with Extremis, and they push not just the super strength, but the fire portion, so when we finally get to the big climax at the end with, all of Tony's extra Iron Man armor showing up, it's worthless, because they're getting torn to shreds. They're falling apart like wet paper towels, because these guys can just slice through them with their firepower. So it's this big moment that you build up in the trailers falls flat.
Speaking of people with Extremis, so then Pepper ends up with it at the end?
Pepper.
And okay, so this is something that bothers me, and this sort of thing has always bothered me. Actually, before I fully get to that. So, she's got it after a while.
They inject her with Extremis.
And then she's like, gotta jump, and Tony's like, I'll catch you, and then he doesn't, and then she's falling, and it's like, no, and then she falls into fire, and then Tony's all, ah, and I'm like, dude, she's fine.
Yeah.
Dude, she's totally fine, like, that girl is on fire. She is totally fine.
Yes. Because...
What are you doing? Why are you crying? She's okay. Like, just wait. It'll be like 5 minutes tops. Okay, she's gonna get back up, and she's gonna impress you, alright? Just hold on a second. Oh, guess what happened? That happened. In fact, not only is she super strong and on fire, but... obviously, being super strong means you have the knowledge to wield your super strength. Yeah. Obviously, so now she's a master of kung fu. Uh-huh. Why? I've seen so many movies do that. Like, why, just because you suddenly have strength, does that mean you know how to wield the strength? Like, here she is doing all these kickflips and junk, and she's like she's swinging a freaking pole.
What gets me is that when you think about it, Tony managed to do next to nothing in that last fight, because one, the armors are getting torn to shreds. I mean, they didn't even give a chance for the Silver Centurion armor to do anything. And then Pepper, you know, the girl on fire, apparently, as you're calling her,
I wanted to see a unibeam.
Yeah, we didn't even get freaking unibeam, hardly. We get Pepper beating up Killian, grabbing Iron Man's arm, putting it on her, and then she kills him.
It's kind of like the spoilers end of Harry Potter, where Harry Potter's not the one who defeats that he who shall not be named.
He who shall not be named, because you can't remember his name for a second.
Shut up!
It's Voldemort. I said it.
It's Voldemort. There's not another R in there.
Fine. Point being, and then it was like at the beginning of the movie they say, okay, AIM repurposed War Machine to be Iron Patriot, and if you know anything about the comics, heck, if you even watch Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, you know automatically, wait, AIM are bad guys. Well, this can't go well. And then what happens? It doesn't go well. The same thing that happened in the last movie, War Machine got hacked. Guess what? They did it again. War Machine got hacked. And then they're doing the shell game with Iron Patriot, like, okay, Rhodey's in it. Now he's not in it. Now the president's in it. Now a bad guy's in it. Now someone else is in it. Now Rhodey's back in it. And then he really didn't do anything.
And then can we just talk about how bad that CG looked?
Oh my god, that CG. I'm surprised at you, Marvel. You've got the money, and that was the best CG you could come up with?
There are some people who are saying it was good. I don't really see how you can say that. Because, quite frankly, it was like TV show grade CG.
Basically, and I know this is kind of a niche way of putting it, the current series, or current season of Garo right now, to me, isn't exactly the best CG that they've ever done.
It's okay mocap.
It's okay mocap, yeah. But we didn't even get that. Like, there was one scene where, like, Tony in the suit, or the suit is rubbing Pepper's shoulders.
Oh, it's obviously really badly animated bone structure that is not actually mocapped. It's really bad. When he's initially having the armor come and fly onto him, I think that was one of the most noticeable, really badly CG'd scenes.
Because when you're seeing this mess in, like, IMAX, like, you're hard-pressed not to notice these things. And the thing about it is, you know, I bring up Garo for a second, this TV show airing, like, midnights in Japan, comparing that to the CG in Iron Man 3.
You shouldn't have to even compare the two.
And even then, like, how close are they? There's not that big of a difference.
Not really, except it looked more like Garo had more, mocap.
A better mocap instead of just, you know, moving a skeleton around.
Which, isn't that saying something? That a cheapo TV show can get that right? And
well, it's not that cheap, but yeah, it's basically, you know, little TV show, big budget movie. You should be able to do better. I mean, really the best mocap they ever did, or CG that they did, was in the Avengers. And that's the thing that sucks about it. Because really, if you wanted Iron Man 3, you watch the Avengers. Because the Avengers delivers on everything that you didn't get in Iron Man 2, which is like, hey, Iron Man didn't do anything. Well, guess what? Here's the Avengers. He does everything.
Hey, you know what I was questioning in the theater? Like, why didn't they send out Iron Patriot sooner? Like, hey, there's this terrorist out here. He's hit us at least twice already. Somebody get Iron Patriot out on the job. And it took, like, 3 major happenings before they sent him out. Like, I found myself questioning, why didn't they do this already? Why did they choose to do this instead of doing this other thing? Like, I was questioning their really
on top of
stupid... Like, 1, I knew where they were going, but 2, I was really mad that I knew where they were going, because I know if I were in the driver's seat of making different decisions in different characters' heads in different parts of the movie, I would have been like, no, that's a stupid idea, I would not do that, I would do this instead. And then they proceed to not do that because it's a badly written Hollywood movie.
Well, because the thing about it, I remember I was watching one of those interviews with Kevin Smith, and he was talking about doing his movie Red State, and his mindset on writing the script for that was such that when he was writing it, if he could logically jump to the next point in what was going to happen in the script, then the audience would do it too. Because if it got too predictable, nobody would want to see that. So the way he did it was when he got to a point that it was too obvious what the next point would be, he jumped to something completely different. That way it would keep the audience on their toes. And that's kind of what I would expect more from, filmmakers who want to make, a good story. But this was too easy.
And then I want to rush another comment because we're going to have to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Then the introduction of the kid, right?
Oh, the kid.
As it
okay,
is,
I'll give it this much. The kid, those scenes are funny in and of themselves if I was watching, like, Robert Downey Jr. in a comedy.
Yeah.
But that's not what I came to watch.
No, I mean, I feel like anytime you introduce a kid into something, it really brings a movie down. Because then he's got to get all buddy-buddy with the kid. And, well, I'm never into that, like, ever.
Then explain Jurassic Park.
I'm not even hardly into the kids there, but on the whole, the movie's a good movie. The point I'm trying to make is that, you've introduced this kid, then suddenly he has to rely on the kid, and in fact somehow the kid manages to fix the Iron Man suit. Like, I didn't understand
not exactly.
that.
Well, really what it comes down to is that at the beginning of the movie they're building up this big thing, and they did it in the trailers and they didn't deliver on that. He's basically got PTSD from the events of the Avengers, being stuck in the wormhole, falling through, the universe being bigger than what he thought, that delivery on what Nick Fury tells him in the first movie, you're part of a bigger universe, you just don't know it yet. Well, now he knows it. And it's like, well, how do you deal with that? They show that with, okay, he built the armors, but where does that go? That's still not enough. That doesn't resolve it, because he's still paranoid and building more. And he's having these freak-out sessions, and people are asking him, hey, you want to talk about what happened? You want to talk about what happened? No, I don't want to talk about it. I'm freaking out. You want to talk about what happened?
And then they never go there.
The kid tells him, well, you're a mechanic, right? Make something. And Tony's just like, okay. Like, that's literally what he says.
And so he never solves his problem, he just keeps doing the one thing that he's been doing to hold the problem off. And that's really... we really don't have time to continue this discussion.
But really, I expected so much more out of this movie, and it didn't even hardly deliver on any of what it said it was going to deliver. Even that last scene at the end of the credits was, albeit funny, but at the same time it's like, this is really what you're going to do with the Hulk?
And then, because there may or may not be another Iron Man, because they don't know the situation with Robert Downey Jr., the closing is very much, oh, there could be another one, there could not be another one, why don't we just leave it, like, in a nice, neat package, and then ship it out the door.
But that felt very rushed, the ending.
Very, very rushed.
Kind of like what we're doing right now.
Yeah, because now we have about a minute left to go, and we're going to have to rush up this conversation, and we're going to have to just hurry up and shut up. So, that was it. That's the real end of the podcast. Thank you for listening to us go on about Iron Man 3. You can definitely leave us comments saying whether or not you agree with us.
You're free to your opinions.
You're free to have your opinions. We're free to not agree with your opinions. So that having been said, thank you again for listening. We'll be back next week, and I'm Mars Girl.
And I'm Josh Knight the First.
And that was another episode of Beyond the Black Rims, and we'll see you next week.
Alright, catch you then.
Bye.